What's up guys? So today I'm going to be doing something I've never done before on my channel, and it's something I never thought I would ever do because it's something I'm normally pretty against doing as a coaster enthusiast, but there's been a lot of demand for this and people are always asking me to do this, so here we are. Today I'm going to be going over my top 25 coasters overall of every coaster that I've ever ridden. I've ridden 349 coasters so far in my life, and this is the top 25 on that list. The main reason why I've never done a ranking like this before is because I don't really like to rank coasters against one another. I like to enjoy each coaster for what it is by itself. I feel like comparing coasters to one another kind of takes away the enjoyment that a specific coaster has to offer. Yeah, I mean obviously some coasters are better than others, there's no denying that, but still, I like to enjoy each coaster for what it is. And one other reason why I don't really like to post my rankings publicly is because frankly, so many coaster enthusiasts get so offended by other people's opinions, and honestly, it's ridiculous. But hey, you know what? You all asked for this, so I don't want to hear you complaining. After all, this is my channel. You see this? You see that? It's the Rye Guy, not the you guy, the Rye Guy. So this is my opinion. Alright, that's enough ranting. On to the list. Number 25 on my list would be Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. This ride really had to grow on me. When I rode it for the first time as an enthusiast back in 2019, I really wasn't all too impressed by it. When I rode it every year after 2019, it seemed to get better and better, and it just overall grew on me. Especially the triangle airtime hills at the end. Like, Air wasn't trying to go for that kind of airtime, but they did. Accidents happen. Number 24 on my list would be Goliath at Six Flags Great America. And when I went to Great America for the first time back in 2021, I kind of knew that this would be my favorite ride in the park, and that's definitely the case. It's a short ride, but what it packs in its short layout, it does perfectly. It is so fast paced, the ejector moments are so good in this ride, the zero G stall is one of the best stalls out there. A little bit on the rough side, but I feel like the roughness kind of gives this ride a little bit of character. Honestly, I think this ride wouldn't be as good if it didn't have a little bit of that roughness to it. Number 23 on my list would be Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. So this is practically Goliath but on steroids and more of a terrain coaster. Again, it's a little bit short, but it does a great job in its short layout, and it's so action-packed and so fast-paced, you don't have a chance to catch your breath at all in this ride. It is a little bit rougher. There is one pretty bad pothole at the bottom of the first hill. Especially if you sit in a wheel seat, you'll really feel this pothole, so try not to sit in a wheel seat. And I love the double barrel roll finale. This is a cool way to end the ride. Number 22 on my list would be Copperhead Strike. You're paying for that. I feel like the highlight of this ride is all the hang time that you get on the two loops and on the inverted top hat. The first launch is pretty weak, I'll give it that, but the second launch is pretty fun with the bunny hops. It does meander a little bit, but I find that it actually works on this ride somehow. I kind of find it fun. And of course, how could you forget the JoJo roll at the beginning of the ride? I mean, more rides need that. Number 21 on my list would be Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom.
Run.
Okay. It's as simple. The world needs more of these things. This is a Chance Rides Hyper GTX model. This is the only one that exists right now, but I know that there's a new one opening up in Arizona. I think it's opening up in 2023. But according to the advertising photos of it, it's a lot different than what Lightning Run is, and I think Lightning Run is going to be the much better version of it. Every single hill is just packed with brutal ejector in this thing. The only downside is that it does meander a little bit, and it is a little bit repetitive, but it's still a lot of fun. Number 20 on my list, we're going to be staying at the same park at Kentucky Kingdom, and it's going to be Storm Chaser. When I read this for the first time, I really didn't know what to expect. I was just kind of thinking, it's probably going to be a mid-tier RMC, nothing too special about it. Boy, was I wrong. I just think this thing was running ridiculously faster than it normally does, because I've never heard anybody rave about this coaster, but the way it was running on the day I was there, it was absolutely insane. And it wasn't even that hot of a day too. It was a stormy day, it was overcast, not too hot, a little bit humid, but I did get some rain rides on it later in the day, and boy, those rain rides were something else. This thing just rips through its layout, and it has a decent variety of elements too. It's not very repetitive like most RMCs are. Number 19 on my list would be Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. Ghost. Just like my last date.
You have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get it.
This has practically everything I love in a wooden coaster. It has a nice variety of elements. You have awesome airtime, you have awesome laterals and decent pacing. It's glass smooth. What more could you want in a wooden coaster? And the night rides in this ride are just fantastic. Number 18 on my list would be Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. So Pennsylvania's about to have two Revenges. You got Phantom's Revenge and you want to have Wildcat's Revenge. I mean, Pennsylvania, can we get our coasters right the first time, please? But I'm glad you corrected it, because Wildcat's Revenge looks great, and this Revenge is honestly even better, I think. This ride actually had to grow on me. When I rode it for the first time in 2019, I wasn't all too impressed with it. The second half was great, but the first half kind of was dull to me. But the more I rode it, the more I really grew to love the ride, especially the second drop going down into the valley. That part, especially at night, in the front row, was one of the most terrifying coaster experiences I've ever had. When it's pitch black and you're diving into a valley and you have the head choppers from Thunderbolt, it's just utterly insane. And I will say that I did enjoy the original color scheme the most, But the purple was pretty nice. I actually voted for the terrifying teal. I wasn't too big of a fan of the purple, but I'm kind of glad that they went with the purple. Number 17 on my list would be Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. And this is by far my favorite dueling coaster whenever it does duel, which is like 20% of the time. But when it does duel, it is so much fun, especially on the Top Gun stall when you're hanging upside down, you just look straight down and you see a train full of people doing an airtime hill underneath you. It's just, there's nothing like that. It's just so surreal. And yeah, the second lift hill is a bit of a buzzkill, but it ain't all too bad. If anything, it kind of builds up the anticipation and you're hoping that the trains are going to duel. But overall, it's just a super solid ride. Number 16 on my list would be Voyage at Holiday World, and this may be a little bit low in my rankings for some people, but hear me out. I can't deny it, the Voyage is an absolutely phenomenal ride. The layout is incredible. It's one of the best wooden coasters ever created, and I don't think anything will even come close to that level again. But I will give this. For Hollywood Nights, when they do trimless night rides, it is a little bit better, but it isn't all that much better. I think it's a bit of an overhyped situation. For me personally, I still loved it, but I feel like the environment, just being surrounded by other coaster enthusiasts and other people who are just as passionate about coasters as me, just being surrounded by all those people hyped up, kind of made the environment more intense for me. The ride itself is still good, but I think without that environment, it just wouldn't have stood out to me as much. But as I said, I can't deny that this ride is still freaking phenomenal, and this is still pretty high in my rankings. Number 15 on my list would be X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and this is probably the most aggressive roller coaster that I've ever ridden. If you love intensity, look no further. Just go right to X2. There's nothing like doing an almost vertical drop and facing backwards and doing a flip as you're valleying and just flipping throughout the entire layout. There's just nothing else like it in the country. It is a little bit on the short side, but I'm kind of glad it is a little bit on the short side, because if it was any longer, I think it would be a little bit too much to handle. Number 14 on my list would be Onion, or Orion at Kings Island. So I'm just going to say it right here. There's a lot of debate whether Orion is a Giga Coaster or not a Giga Coaster. I go by the height of the drop. I don't go by the height of the lift hill. And plus, furthermore, train. I live near a railroad, so there's trains all the time here. Hooray untreated ADD. But I think the strongest point here is that the coaster is whatever the park advertises it as. The park says it's a Giga Coaster, therefore it's a Giga Coaster. No more questions. So I think Orion is a very overhated ride, and people just hate on it because it's a lot shorter and not quite as good as Fury 325, which we'll talk about that later. But when you don't compare it to Fury 325 and look at the ride for just what it is, it's a fantastic ride. I love the wave turn after the first drop. I know a lot of people aren't way too crazy about that wave turn, but I personally love it, especially in the front row. Super overhated ride, and I think that this ride deserves a little bit more love. Number 13 on my list would be Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. When I rode this for the very first time, I knew almost nothing about this ride. I didn't really hear too much about it. I didn't know what to expect, and my mind was blown from the first ride. This has by far the best large camelbacks from B&M, period. The sustained floater or flowjector that you get on these camelbacks is ridiculous, and I don't think there's any coasters out there that have sustained flowjector for that long. The first half is super strong, but the second half is a little bit weak, but I feel like the first half kind of makes up for it. The second half is just kind of meanders a little bit. There's not too many forces going on. All right, number 12 on my list would be Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. Oh, okay, you'll be okay. Just follow my voice, We're gonna make it, We're almost there, and we're back. Welcome back. Good to see you again. Wrong ride. So yeah, this is probably the most intense roller coaster when it comes to positive G-forces and sustained positives at that. I gray out every single time on that first turn, and I don't really get my vision back until we're like finishing the last major airtime hill. Just staying low to the ground at that speed and with those super snappy transitions, I'm always laughing my ass off on this ride, and I'm like just mind blown like how intense this ride is. This is one of the few rides that almost every single time I ride it afterwards, I'm just shaking a little bit because my body's just processing like, what the f just happened? And I really can't marathon this ride too much. I can ride it like 4 or 5 times and I need to take a break because my body just says like, okay, I can only take so much of losing blood in my brain. To anybody else who can ride it more than 5 times, power to you. All right, number 11 on my list, and this is an interesting choice for me because this ride used to be my number 1 overall for a good while, but when I got my rides on it in 2022, it definitely shot way down in my rankings. That would be Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. So yeah, for a while, I was on the hype train of Steel Vengeance being the best coaster ever created, and don't get me wrong, it still is a great coaster, and I still love it, but in 2022, it just wasn't running as good as it had before. I just felt like a lot of the elements just didn't pop. The Outer Bank Hill was just kind of, okay. It's very repetitive. I definitely realize how repetitive this ride is. I mean, there's not much variety at all on the ride. But still, overall, it is a lot of fun. One thing I do want to point out though, and I hate to like call out people, but the ride crew was just flat out rude when I went there in 2022. Maybe they were just having a bad day, I don't know. But one thing that really stood out to me is that when I went to put my phone in the locker, went through the metal detector, The ride operator who was checking the metal detector, when I walked through, he just said, "Go!" I was like, okay. A little off-putting. Maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. Alright, now we are down to the last 10. So number 10 on my list will be Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. I swear, every single year, this ride just gets faster and faster and faster. So whatever King's Dominion is doing to this ride, they need to keep doing it. It is a little bit on the repetitive side, but it has just airtime after airtime after airtime, and honestly, I'm okay with that. It definitely runs better in the colder weather, so if you can ride it during Haunt or during Winterfest, that's definitely the best time to ride this ride. Number 9 on my list will be Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Who are you? I'm Ryan. Oh, I'm Ryan too. Just 2019 Ryan, before you rode Time Traveler. Wait, it's 2019? That means I haven't ridden Time Traveler yet. How can I review it if I haven't ridden it yet? It's a good point. How do I get back? Well, just go back the way you came. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Very helpful. Well, good luck with 2020. Good luck? Why would I need good luck? 2020 is going to be a great year. Pantheon and Iron Gwazi opening up. It's going to be a great year. Okay, kiddo. You keep thinking that. Okay, that was fun. I don't know, this is something about that first drop, just doing a vertical drop right out of the station and just spinning while you're doing it, and you don't know what direction you're going to be facing when you're doing it. This is something about that is just so unique and so out of this world. It is kind of a controlled spin throughout the ride, but it's a different spin every single ride you have on it. So throughout the entire ride, you never know what direction you're going to be facing at what part of the ride. The only buzzkill of this ride is that right before the first launch, it does stop for a few seconds and you just kind of sit there doing nothing, and then it just slowly pushes you. That's the only buzzkill about the ride, but the rest of the ride is just super solid. Number 8 on my list would be Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia, and I'm just going to say it, this ride is on drugs.
Drugs.
No, we're okay.
Drugs.
This is awkward. No, thank you.
Drugs.
Who invited him?
When I rode this for the first time in 2022, I heard a lot of good things about it, but I was not expecting it to be this good. I wasn't expecting that. Technically, it's not a hypercoaster, it's under 200 feet. It doesn't need that height. This thing just rips through its layout. The positive views that you get on the Helix turnaround, and then the airtime on the finale is just utterly ridiculous. It's kind of janky, like how Apollo's Chariot is. There's a little bit of jankiness, but even more janky, but I think that really adds to the aggressiveness of this ride. B&M, please make more stuff like this. Number 7 on my list would be Pantheon of Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and this was about where I was expecting this ride to fall on my rankings. The pacing on this ride is absolutely perfect. There's never a dull moment at all on this ride. This ride is non-stop and every element is executed perfectly. The bunny hops on the swing launch, especially going backwards, is utterly insane. Going on the backward spikes, especially in the back row, is so much fun. I will say that the top hat and the outer bank turn didn't hit quite as hard as I was expecting them to, but they're still a lot of fun. And yeah, there's not much theming to this ride, but I honestly don't care. It's still a fun ride. Alright, number 6 on my list would be El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. I'm too old for this bullshit. So when I rode this for the first time in 2019, I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of it. I mean, I still liked it and it was still my favorite ride in the park, but it was pretty rough in 2019. I mean, the first half was fine, but after the Rolling Thunder Hill going into the Spaghetti Bowl, it was jackhammering me. I could only ride it like 2 or 3 times and I had to stop because my head was throbbing. My rides in 2022 were a lot better, and that definitely shot this ride up my rankings. It was still a little bit rough in the Spaghetti Bowl, but nowhere near as bad. I rode this thing like this many times in 2022, and I loved every single ride I had on it. I hope the Six Flags can do what needs to be done to the ride to repair it and keep it around for many years to come. Number 5 on my list would be Sky Rush at Hershey Park, and while this ride is still in my top 5, and I still love this ride, I am a little bit jaded to it, but that's only because I've ridden this thing so many times. But even after riding so many times, I still have a blast in this thing. The first drop is still one of my favorite drops of all time, especially the back row, left wing seat. Even the right wing seat's pretty good in the back. Honestly, the right wing seat on the back row has grown on me a lot, but the left wing is still where it's at. Honestly, I think my favorite thing about Sky Rush is watching other coaster enthusiasts ride it for their first time. It's just watching their reactions to this train wreck of a coaster. A good train wreck, though. Number 4 on my list would be Fury 325 at Carowinds. Not the beast! Not the beast! I can't believe this. This ride is without a doubt a masterpiece. I don't think B&M will ever top something like this ever again. Absolutely everything is perfect about this ride. The speed, the pacing, the elements, everything about this ride is just so damn good. I also want to give a huge shout out to the ride crew on Fury 325. One of the best ride crews I've ever seen on any coaster. You guys are just so enthusiastic. You guys are so good at what you do. So a huge shout out to you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't change. Number 3 on my list would be Maverick at Cedar Point, and this really shot up my rankings in 2022. I've always loved this ride, but it was always kind of falling more like maybe in the 20s or so, but it was running so good this year. I don't know what it was about it, but I just had so much fun on this ride, and it just blew my mind. I just forgot how much I loved it, and I had to shoot it up this high in my rankings because I just had that much fun on it. And by far the best Stengel dives on any coaster, so Mr. Stengel, we thank you. Number 2 on my list would be Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. So put a roller coaster in a paddock. What could go wrong? This is by far Intimate's masterpiece when it comes to the storytelling, the theming, the pacing of the ride, the variety of the elements on the ride. Everything in this ride is done so perfectly. The first half does meander a little bit, but I think the theming and the storytelling helps with that, and the ride doesn't drag. There's never a dull moment on this ride. You are just one thing after another. It does not stop. And the ride crew in this ride is probably the most efficient ride crew I've ever seen on any coaster. They dispatch train after train after train on this ride, and they're relentless, and they may be a little bit blunt sometimes, but they're just trying to do the job and just trying to get as many people out as possible. So a shout out to the Velocicoaster crew too, because you guys are just absolutely phenomenal. Keep doing you. Alright, number 1 on my list, but before I announce it, I have a special guest. And here he is. Our honored guest, Bulbarius, because my number 1 coaster is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. And Bulby is our honored guest because he's kind of like my little Iron Gwazi from home. Aren't that right, buddy? Want to say hello to everybody? Okay, let's see if we can get a nice lick out of him for you guys. Oh yeah, nice one right there. You guys are blessed. You're welcome. Okay, I think he wants down. I'm gonna put him down right now. So this ride, I had no expectations of this thing being my number 1 coaster of all time. It's a little bit on the short side, but this has by far the best pacing on any coaster I've ever ridden. And the variety of elements on this ride is just so good, and it just rips through its layout. Like my first ride on it was in the morning, and it was in the winter time too when it had just opened. It was opening weekend for the ride. It was running pretty slow on my first ride, but as the day went on and as it heated up, it got faster and faster and faster. And by the end of the day, it was running so fast. And then when I went back to Florida in May, it was a lot hotter out, and the same deal. It just got faster and faster throughout the day. And my last ride of the day on that day in May, it should be illegal how fast that thing was going. Like when we hit the brake run, it easily could have gone another 2,000 or 3,000 feet of track and still be flying through that layout. The Death Roll is by far my favorite inversion of all time, and there's nothing even close. Well, there you have it, guys. That's my top 25 coasters that I've ever ridden. What do you guys think of this list? What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of differences here, but as I said earlier in the video, it's okay to have different opinions. Just don't be an ass about it. Veloci ass, Twisted ass, Iron ass, Ass Head Strike, Fury ass 2.5, Ghost ass. You get the point. There's enough ass in this world. Don't be an ass. Well, I wrapped the video up here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next loop. See ya.